Hello everyone, Alex here again with another image review session. Here are the images that I've processed this week. If you've watched last week's installment, you'll know that I've relatively recently come back from both the Cayman Islands and Raja Ampat, Missouri Resort in Raja Ampat, and I'm finally able to start processing some of the images. I have to say I'm processing in slightly random order as I'm really sort of prioritizing what I've needed at the time. So there's a mixture of images here, either from Raja Ampat or from the Cayman Islands. And the ones I've processed are ones that I've needed. Some of these actually have gone to magazines already. The pictures are mostly taken with my Nikon D850, but some of the Cayman pictures, or majority of the Cayman pictures, are taken with the Sony A7R4, A7R5, sorry, that I was using in Cayman. So let's get going. So I'll just bring up the data on the side. Let me just try and bring that up, and then just close this side off. You should see on the right hand side there the data about the pictures, so you can see some of the camera settings and the cameras used. So this first picture here is actually from a previous Raja Ampat trip taken under Sundarak Jetty, just a soft coral shot that had been sitting around on my computer, and it's not the most amazing shot. Again, it's a bit big, but it's a nice enough shot, and I thought I'd process it out. Just a sort of a very standard Raja Ampat shot. These next two shots are coral fluorescent shots taken with strobe filters. And what I discovered, I changed my strobe filters for the Raja Ampat trip and discovered that they were leaking light and creating this very unusual effect where you get a full fluorescence effect in the central frame, but towards the edges of the frame where the light from the strobe was striking the filter at the wrong angle, a wider spectrum of light was coming through, and as a result you kind of get this weird transition from fluorescence into kind of more other colours of the spectrum. And although it's not what I wanted, I actually rather like this kind of rainbowy effect that it's given. So this is some acropora here, just photographed fluorescing at night, but with this weird transition into other colours. That's kind of completely in camera but completely accidental. This photo here is a double exposure but done in camera on the same dive of the coral fluorescing underneath the hive, which is the new building built at Missouri Resort. You can see this one to get the light for that hive because it was really dark. I was shooting an ISO 5000 and f4.5 at a tenth of a second, handheld at a tenth of a second, while floating in the ocean shooting split levels, trying to get something sharp because there was so little light. Right. These next few pictures are not necessarily my best pictures, but I've processed them out because during this trip and during the Cayman trip as well, I was testing a prototype flash gun for a manufacturer. And this flash gun is a lower specification flash gun than I would normally use. And I didn't want to do too many dives with it. So these are just photos really from just a couple of dives to show how this flash gun can perform. And it's a very nice flash gun. It's just not as nice as my normal Retro Pro flash gun. So I wasn't desperate to spend lots of dive time using it. But this is a long-nosed hawkfish. I quite like this shot. It's not an amazing shot, but I think I like the yawn that I caught here. So that's why I processed this one out. This one is a striated triple fin, a lined triple fin, sitting on this lovely pink sponge that I do think is the background here is a lovely background. A green turtle zoom blur shot, nothing too fancy, just a fun technique to enliven an otherwise fairly unexciting scene of a turtle sitting on the coral. And these are some shots again taken just to show off that flash gun. So sort of a big reef scene, lots of soft corals, lots to light up, but showing that the flash gun was capable of that. And this is a shot taken with just one flash gun to show how much power it had. I quite like this shot with the silhouetted batfish on one side and the lit reef on the other. But both of these are taken on Magic Mountain in Missouri. Right, moving on. There's, I think, a few split levels. I know there's some shallow water stuff. This is a split level shot of some corals growing on the reef. These lovely big acropora gardens that you get on the reefs around Missouri Island, and you can see the Missouri Island in the background now. Actually, the trees have really grown up in this area here in recent years, and I think it's really helped the look of the island. I didn't like this kind of grassy slope before, but I think by the time I next go back there in a couple of years, this will look more and more natural and forested, and I think that's quite nice for the photos. I like having the buildings in here. the water bungalows and things. I think that adds quite a lot to the image. It helps tell the story of the resort. I think it's nice to have natural pictures, but it's also nice to have these split level shots with the resort in. Well, on that same snorkel, I think I ran into these green turtles which come up into the lagoon at high tide to feed on the seagrass. And it's nice because when they're feeding, they need to breathe a lot, so they're up and down to the surface. So it's a great opportunity, particularly because you're snorkeling and you're at the surface already, to do these surface shots of them. And I just held the camera a bit lower here to really work that reflection into the picture. This picture here is a longer exposure, a panning shot, playing around with the turtle. This is a long exposure as well, but it was such a nice composition. I wasn't trying to emphasize the movement here. I just wanted to get this nice reflection of the turtle, but also get that curve of Snell's window and create a pleasing image with the curving shell of the turtle and the curve of Snell's window. Another green turtle. It might be the same individual, might not be, I'm not sure. It's not taken on the same dive. This one's taken with the EMWL 1 and the 160-degree lens. Great for these super close focus wide angle shots. Very easy to make images like this with the EMWL as long as you have a turtle that's friendly and interested, and this green turtle was definitely that. A very cool individual. A split level shot taken snorkeling, again at Missoul Island, this time sort of heading the other way down to the south, and shooting this promontory here. There are some buildings in this picture, and perhaps a shot like this you might consider. You can see one at the top here. That's one of the villas at the top, and there's some more over this side here as well, just zooming into 200%. You could conceivably take those out of a shot like this and have it more of a natural scene. I've chosen not to in this processing, this particular one, but I have to say that there's a lot of arguments to say it would be nice to have this with a more naturalistic feel to it, because it's such an incredible coral garden in the shallows here. And I went there very specifically at this time of day, or this time of tide more than time of day, to try and capture these corals when the water was deep enough to be able to swim into this area, but not so deep that the corals are way down away from the surface. And so the timing for these shots was really important. And I have to say, I got that wrong as much as I got it right, in that I knew I wanted to go at a relatively low tide, and I would just swim down there after a dive when there was a bit of blue sky in the sky, to get those shots. A blue flash harass from the house reef at Missoul, and then another split level, probably taken on a different day here, because you can see the different cloud formations. And this one is really right in front of the dive centre of the resort. You can see the hive. That was the building we saw in the split level nighttime split level shot a few pictures ago, and you can see all the lovely hard coral that just grows right up in the shallows there. It's incredible coral gardens around Missoul Resort, and wonderful. And this one, I was very happy to celebrate the resort being built so sensitively around this beautiful coral garden, and the coral's still thriving even though the resort has been there for a long time. It shows how proper management can allow both to exist side by side, as long as the building is done in a very sensitive way, and obviously all the runoff and things like that, and any waste is properly managed by the resort. And if you do all that, everything can thrive wonderfully, and that's why Missoul is such a special place. This is background on that South Beach side again. This picture here is actually a composite, I think, of 6 frames shot as a panorama of this scene, around with the hard coral garden and then up above the islands. I like this one because the cloud formations are nice fluffy white clouds, possibly taken on the same day as this, actually, looking at the clouds. So I probably took this one and then swam down and shot this one. But yeah, very nice. That's one of the pictures numbers. Yeah, almost certainly taken within about 20 minutes of each other. Well, I can see from the times, can't I? Let me just check. The capture time is... Oh, I can't see it. There we go. No, original date. I can't see the capture time easily on this. So I won't bother with that. Right, and now we transition into the Cayman Islands. These first pictures are from... the first handful of pictures are taken with my D850, and then by the time we get to these butterfly fish, the Sony takes over. These pictures here I went out to shoot, and probably best reviewed in the other order actually. I went out to shoot Lois, who's the diver in these pictures, and what she's doing with this syringe is she's putting antibiotic and probiotic gel on, or paste onto the corals that are infected by the very infectious and very fast moving, very scary stony coral tissue loss disease, which is killing loads and loads of colonies of coral right across the Caribbean, and is really a horrible disease. This treatment does work very well, and I was keen to sort of photograph her doing that. And the way you put it on is you create this line of paste on the disease front, and you use your fingers to push it down to make sure it's properly binding on and not just going to float away from the coral. That's what she's doing in these pictures here. What it can do is it can stop the disease in its tracks. And this is actually a coral that she treated before I arrived on the string, and you can see that the disease has stopped, but you can see that the disease had nearly completely wiped out this coral. There's just this thin slither of living tissue left. But it does show that the treatment works, and although this is not a very attractive picture, I think it's a really interesting and important one to show. And then this is just a picture taken on one of those dives to show that there is plenty of really nice coral growth around, particularly in the species that aren't affected by stony coral tissue loss disease, like these plate corals here, growing on the side of these bommies. But a really nice amount of coral growth here, and I love how it's mixed in with that calcareous green algae that I think looks really, really pretty mixed in amongst all the corals. Just that mixture of textures and colours is really nice on the bommy. Right, we'll move on to the Sony pictures now. These are actually still stony coral tissue loss. This is the infection front of the disease as it moves across very quickly across these coral colonies. Literally in a couple of weeks it will go from one side of a colony to the other, and even as a tourist diver you can see the progression if you re-dive the same site, and you see that these coral colonies, particularly in the photos, you see how much is wiped out in the few days between. One thing I have noticed, and the reason I was taking these pictures, is I've noticed that the butterfly fish are really attracted to feeding on that disease front. And I always see them picking along there looking for food. So I don't know what they're feeding on, and whether they might even be helping to spread the disease, because they're obviously feeding where the virus is prevalent. But I just thought those pictures are useful to take. I've never heard anyone talk about it. And you can see this one here. It takes a bit more spotting, but this one was feeding on that area where the stony coral tissue loss disease is going. And you can see the dead coral and then the living coral right next to it, and that's where the 4-spot butterfly fish is feeding. Because it was intent on feeding there, it also gave me a good opportunity to make exactly the photos I wanted of it, and get these nice portraits of the butterfly fish. This is the schoolmaster snapper. When fish are hovering, one of the things I'm always waiting for are those pectoral fins to move backwards and forwards. And if they're hovering, they'll be sculling backwards and forwards with those pectoral fins. And I'll be trying to time my shots to get those pectoral fins looking great in pictures. Something I've been doing for years and years with fish like schooling snappers, with fish like resting grunts, and in the Indo-Pacific resting sweetlips. Some Flamingo Tongue shots, just with a 90mm, just like the nice purple of this sea fan. And this is actually with the WWL1. Just showing how small a picture you can shoot with that. So, you can really do quite a nice little close-up scene with that, with the WWL1. This image here, I think there was another shot from this series in last week's review. This with a central composition. This one is with an off-center composition with the spiny head blenny looking into this lovely scene of zoanthids. This picture was shot with a bit less magnification than last week's shot, so it was easier to keep all of the zoanthids in focus in the picture. And I like the mouth open pose of this spiny head blenny in this picture. I think it makes for quite a pleasing overall composition, quite an attractive frame. Okay, a shot from the kittiwake. This is one of the dives on the kittiwake. This is Sam modelling and swimming past Mr. Ricks, who's one of the compressors inside the diving support room inside the kittiwake. This was always a favourite place to shoot when the wreck was vertical. Sorry, it was sitting upright in the seabed. But now this picture is although it looks like a very comfortable angle, she's actually almost swimming directly down towards me. And if you look at the bubbles behind her, you can see that as she breathes out, her bubbles are actually going up her body and past her feet, as opposed to her looking horizontally. Whereas when the wreck was first down and this room was horizontal, we'd be able to take this picture very easily because everything was just as it looks in the photo, and very easy to pose. So very hard work for her to pose for this picture, and a very small gap for her to swim through and to time the shot. And it's such an awkward angle swimming down She's done very well to look neat and tidy in this picture. Easy for me to shoot because I was just sitting there pointing the camera up, and as long as I didn't breathe, my job was nice and easy. This is just a WWL shot of a stingray on the sandbar, just trying to eat the camera, mouth open. Just a fun shot, really. I just thought I'd process it out. This is another stony coral tissue loss disease image. This is the same coral colony before it was infected by the disease, and obviously as it is now, where it's completely dead. And one of the things that's is really obvious about this disease hitting the reefs is that it kills the corals so fast that all their structure remains. I think a lot of other coral diseases, or when coral colonies die naturally, they die more slowly and they get eroded a little bit and you don't see them. Whereas the skeletons of the dead corals from the stony coral tissue loss disease, they really, you really see brain corals and you see all the grooves on them on the reef, but they're just dead. And you see this pillar coral here with all its fingers sticking up in the air. Lois, who was in the pictures previously, she actually did manage to save several fragments from this colony, and they're actually doing well in the coral nursery that they have there. So although this colony is dead, part of it is still thankfully living on. But yeah, this colony was a really obvious cleaning station. And if you look at this older picture here, you can see the cleaner, the bluehead wrasse at the top there, which are the yellow versions of them, which are often acting as cleaners. There's a young rock beauty angelfish. There's a yellowtail damsel over here. Lots and lots going on in that area, and it's sad to see sort of not many fish hanging around it now it's dead. Right, next picture. So these are some more pictures taken with those experimental flash guns, which is why I've processed them out. This is just a Flamingo Tongue cowrie, just on a little sea rod. A giant anemone, as they call them in the Caribbean. They're not particularly giant, but they are by Caribbean terms. Tentacles. This picture here is a reef scene, just again a big reef scene shot with those strobes just to show what they can do. And then moving on, here is and then back now to normal photography. Just a nice portrait of this smooth box fish, smooth trunk fish, handsome little beast, just a nice little critter to shoot. Very, very standard shot, but it's just such an attractive little fish. I couldn't resist processing it out. Nicely in focus, nicely posed. This is one of the workshop setups we're doing. This is Sydney in the photo there, photographing Sam posing. And we quite often on the wreck dive set these shots up rather than everyone sort of jostling for position for models and shooting. Much easier to put one model down and then just let the photographers take their turns. And while you're waiting, you can either take pictures like this with the main photographer in the picture, but while you're taking these pictures, you're at least making sure your settings are right so that when you get your chance in the prime position that Sydney's in here, you're all ready to go. But I like the picture with the diver taking the pictures. I think it gives a nice story as well, so that's why I've processed this one out. I also processed it out to send to Sydney. I thought she might appreciate it. This is a shot from that same setup, this time here sinking down to the seabed and working a black and white angle. There are actually some snorkelers in the surface in this picture, and actually during this dive our boat captain had to untie the boat and go and rescue one of them who got in real trouble actually, while we were underwater completely oblivious to what was going on up there. But it's very cool to snorkel over the kittiwake, but you are in water that you cannot touch the bottom in. A resident of the kittiwake that really attracts our eye these days is definitely this Goliath grouper. It's not a totally huge one, but it's got a good size to it, and it's very friendly. Well, not very friendly, but it's tolerant, and it does provide some good photographic opportunities around the wreck to get this large fish into your pictures of the wreck. So I do like having him on the wreck. And then now we're heading over to the sandbar. I showed, I think last week, some circular fisheye shots from the sandbar, and these are when I had the lens zoomed into the other end, shooting non-circular fisheye shots. This is a stingray at dawn, another stingray at dawn. That first one is with flash, the second one is without flash. I think both are fine. I quite like the effect the flash gives a very different look, but you really don't need it at the sandbar, it's so shallow. These are a pair of Reef Sharks shot with the WACP one rather than WWL one. The problem of shooting them both is you realise straight away when you put the WACP one that it is quite a bit better optically, and then you have to lug the WACP one around for the rest of the trip because you've shown to yourself how much better it is. Whereas if you only own the WWL one, you're completely happy with it because it's excellent. It's just not as excellent as its big brother. This is a golden rough head blenny, little macro shot. I like shots of these where you catch them with a funky pose like this. He's got his mouth open, adds a bit of character. And then I think our final picture is back on the WWL one with Sam inside the cave. I think this picture here, I had a mistake on the autofocus. I think I had people detect still set on the subject recognition of the Sony. And so it picked up Sam in this one and focused on her. And as a result, the edges of the frame are really quite out of focus. You see how blurred that corner of the frame is relative to, if I scroll across, relative to Sam's face, which is nice and sharp. And that's because I had that subject selection on, or subject recognition on, and the focus just locked on Sam. And as a result, was set a bit deep into the frame. It's shot on f11, so there should be plenty of depth of field. But as a result, it wasn't. I had to shoot this on a very slow exposure of 1/10 of a second to get that blue light coming through the background. I've just opened it Photoshop, excuse me, so it's going to spin and complain for a bit. But to get that blue light coming through the back, it needed that very long exposure. But none of the foreground blurred because obviously that was all in the dark, so it didn't have any light to blur with. But yeah, the corners are blurred, not because of the aperture, but because the focus is set too deep in the picture because it went on subject recognition. So it was a good lesson, this picture, for not using subject recognition on people in underwater pictures. Right, I think that is all I've got to say. I'll be back again next week with another random selection of what I've processed during the week. I hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.